Hello, everyone. My name is Ezra, otherwise known as E-Soup, and today we are finally getting back into QJJ. And I am so excited. It has been way too long because I was out of town. Hi, Psykeen. Hi, Blue. Hi, Vase. It's good to see you all. Yeah, I was out of town. I had a very eventful trip back home. That some of you might have seen me ranting about in Discord. Uh, not in my Discord, it was in another one. But, the long and short of it is that first something happened with the rental car that we had, and we had to deal with that, and it was super annoying. And then that was dealt with, and then we had 2 flights, and the second flight to get back, not home for me, but back to the airport near where my parents live, which I then was going to drive home from. To get back there, our second flight was super delayed because of weather, and they actually had us get on the plane, and then they were like, we've been on the plane too long, we have to get off the plane. And we were just waiting to find out if the flight would be canceled or if they would actually do it. And then they were like, okay, get back on the plane, we're actually doing it. Oh, but it was super late. So it was like 1 a.m. when we got to the, final destination airport. And then the friend of my parents who was picking us up in their car, and he shows up, and then he's like, I stopped the car and I tried to start it again and I can't start the car. And then so we had to find, there was like a skycap guy who had one of those like portable battery things where you can jump a car without another car. So then we had to get the car jumped. And another thing happened when the battery like went out and it wouldn't start, the trunk was open. And it's one of those like hatchback trunks. It's not like a trunk that's like fully enclosed. Thankfully, because for something automatically like locked the car doors. So I had to, like, climb into the car from the hatch to, like, open the doors. And then I was just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna drive home. I'll drive everybody home. It's cool. I'm in the driver's seat already. So the car's jumped, and we're driving home, and I'm on a highway going, like, 65 miles per hour, and a deer ran out. And thankfully, I mean, not for the deer, but thankfully I hit the deer on the side of the car and not straight in the middle, because then it could have gone through, the windshield and, like, hit us. But we hit the deer on, like, the side of the car. So the side front bumper part was all, like, loose and hanging off. And I pulled over for a second and I was like, the car was jumped, so I can't, like, stop the car and start it again. Like, actually turn off the engine. And I was like, I'm just gonna get back on the road and drive home with the part of the bumper just like hanging loose. And sorry, Henry, I know you're reacting to me saying not for the deer. I'm just like, I want to recognize, unfortunately, the deer was not okay. I don't know what, see, it was completely out of the blue shocking because 1, this deer was booking it, but 2, I've never seen a deer try to run across the highway over there where everybody's going 65 miles an hour. That doesn't normally happen, but it happened to be like kind of a quiet night. There wasn't a lot of traffic. Normally, even in the middle of the night, there's like traffic over there because there's 18-wheelers and stuff, but there was like no traffic. So of course it happened then. So anyway, basically, I just was like, whatever, I'm gonna drive us home. And I drove us home, and thankfully the tire didn't like go flat or anything, but it was like we were dragging a piece of bumper just like on the ground in the front right side the whole way. You could like hear weird sounds. You could see there was like some rubber seal that was like flapping in the wind, and I'm just like driving like, okay, we're gonna get home. And we did. And everything was okay. But that was a lot. So it was a whole saga. Blue, you said the universe really did not want you coming home from that trip. Exactly. Oh yeah, Vase, my parents my parents called their insurance and dealt with it, and I think their insurance had something like if we couldn't get someone to jump the car or if the car was broken down, we would have been able to like call a number and get roadside help. But we were all like, it's late, it's the middle of the night, like we just want to get home. And it's just, you know, thankfully that worked out. And I was able to just kind of like pass out and not do anything yesterday. So that was good for me. I know, Blue, you said it's so crazy to me after all of that you also got spooked by a surprise deer. Like, what are the chances? Exactly. That was the thing, is I was just like, literally, what are the chances of this? So all that is to say, I'm super excited to get back into QJJ, but I kind of forgot what happened immediately at the end last time. I didn't really get a chance to look back over. So if I take a minute today to be like, okay, what's going on? That's why. Because I just got myself completely scrambled the other day. But today we're reading chapters 168 to 172. And just as a reminder, I will be streaming on Saturday to make up for the one I missed on Monday. So the next stream is going to be Saturday at the regular time, 3 to 5 Eastern. So, now to finally get into it. We're on page 221 for chapter 168, which is called Scorpion. I think this has to do with someone having a scorpion tattoo. Fei Sheng gathered himself at once, staggering to his feet and moving to retrieve Avalanche for his master. Yet when he leaned over, he noticed something odd. As his gaze slid down that white sleeve, he realized Shen Zichun's entire right hand was trembling. Thick, sticky blood coated Shen Zichun's fingertips. Gedal had almost snapped off 2 of his fingers when they'd traded blows earlier. This trembling was beyond his control after such a fight. But he couldn't reveal the slightest hint of pain. The armored cavalry had just suffered heavy casualties, and Gedal had splattered their brigade commander's brain matter right before their eyes. Shen Zichun had to stabilize morale before it plummeted off a cliff. Master, Fei Sheng called out, apprehensive. Our men are assembling the bandits to try to reorganize the supply squad. Shen Zichun always carried that blue handkerchief on him, but he couldn't bear to soil it with blood. This handkerchief was something he'd taken from Xiao Chia. I could never forget that. Tell the Li Bei armored cavalry to take off their helmets. Don't panic. Now that the mounted crossbow is ours, our opponents are sitting ducks. And then there is a scene break. Both of Liu R's hands were shaking. He'd been released and lowered from the tree, but the wind sent a chill through the damp patch between his legs. His former subordinate had taken advantage of the chaos to drag him along, pushing and shoving as he urged, "Run, hurry." Liu R looked over at the supply squad that had been thrown into confusion and asked feebly, Who was it?" "The Li Bei armored cavalry." His former subordinate untied the cloth sack around his waist and threw it away, along with the chains that had bound him. "Let them fight. Let's go." When Liu R still failed to move, he pinched him and cried anxiously, "Old man Liu, what are you doing?" Liu R's feet scraped across the mud as he hunched over and held his ground. With a snarl, he said, "I'll go, but not before stabbing these bastards to death." He pushed his former subordinate away and staggered back toward the camp. "That son of a bitch aimed that crossbow at me. Those sons of bitches." He stumbled and fell, then got up again, muttering, "I'm going to smash them to a pulp. Smash them all to a pulp." The men in Chen Zichuan's retinue who'd arrived after him had rounded up the remaining bandits. Together, they pulled the overturned wagon back onto its wheels. The ballista was caked with mud. Liu R hastily wiped it clean with the sleeve. Heaving with the crowd, he helped hoist the giant crossbow back upright. The moment it was steady, he put several long bolts in place and pulled the trigger. Spotting this from 100 paces away, Fei Sheng whistled to the embroidered uniform guard still engaging the Biansha horsemen. The embroidered uniform guard fell away at once, retreating toward the remaining Libe armored cavalry. With no command from Gedal, by the time the Biansha horsemen in the clearing realized something was amiss, it was too late. Okay, so I at least remember some of this now. The guy Liu R was a bandit, and the bandits have to follow the Biansha horsemen because they've kind of like taken over and imprisoned them. And they were about to kill him as a punishment, and then everybody showed up to start fighting, so he has survived that. The moment the click of the trigger sounded, Liu R felt an intense pain in both arms from the strain of the draw. He watched those long bolts arc into the sky before plunging down. Their impact slammed the Biansha horsemen, who had nowhere to hide, right into the ground, impaled along with their horses. It was an almost instant death. Liu R stood on tiptoe and raised both arms to the sky. He laughed madly, as if this was the most gratifying moment of his life. Very quickly, the arrows were depleted, and the Biansha horsemen, who had already been dealt a severe blow, could no longer resist. Their small numbers prevented them from getting into any sort of formation. A couple of rounds from the ballista was all it took to scatter them. Liu R's former subordinate grabbed his collar and shouted over the din, "Old man Liu, we should run now." Although they had been captives, they'd undeniably aided in the transportation of military supplies for Biansha, and even guided them through Zhongbo. The Libe armored cavalry and the Biansha horsemen were sworn enemies, divided by the chasm of blood debt. If the bandits who helped them were to fall into the Libe armored cavalry's hands, they would surely die. Wasting no more time, Liu R leapt off the wagon and limped along. Go, 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 move. The moment they saw the Libe cavalry retreating, the bandits, as if by unspoken agreement, all turned to flee. But the cavalry squad that had brought up the rear was prepared. They drew their blades and surrounded the bandits, so that they had no choice but to stay right where they were. Thrown into disarray, the bandits huddled together within the ring of horses' hooves. Even if they wanted to break out of the encirclement, they had no blades. Why do I feel like they're going to take the bandits and be like, you're going to fight for our side now, instead of, just like killing them or something? I don't know, it could be a way to get more soldiers, I guess. Gradually, they squatted down amid the warning shouts and held their heads, not daring to make any more noise. Fei Sheng and the other guards escorted Chen Zichuan back to his carriage. The moment the curtain swung shut, they heard the dull, muffled sound of coughing. Ding Tao gripped his candy, his eyes reddening. He tugged on Fei Sheng's sleeve in a panic and said, My young master." Fei Sheng covered Ding Tao's mouth with a hand and gestured to his subordinates to have the embroidered uniform guard surround the carriage, blocking it off from both the armored cavalry and the bandits. Chen Zichuan bent over in the seat, staring at his open palm, stained with the blood he had just coughed out. Great, cool, okay. The index and middle fingers of his right hand were burning with pain, as if they were still being ripped apart. Earlier, he hadn't bent to retrieve Avalanche because he couldn't lift it. He hung his head, pressing his good hand to his forehead, and swallowed down the next wave of blood, threatening to claw its way up his throat. I'm always worrying about him, and then a little bit of time goes by not hearing about his health and state. And I kind of forget for a second, and then something reminds me, and I'm like, oh god, right. Things are not good here. A long time passed before he spoke, his voice sounding particularly low and deep from the other side of the curtain. Do a head count of the bandits. Have them continue pushing the wagon. Send a swift rider to border camp and convey the news of this encounter to Tsa'an. And send someone to Tszhou with the message for Yuan Zhuo. Tell him to reassure Zhou Gui until my return. It doesn't matter what King Yi says. Unless he actually dispatches his troops, Tszhou must not make a move. What about the Biansha captives? Fei Sheng stepped closer to the curtain and asked carefully, Are we keeping them? Take their blades and hammers. Shen Zichuan clenched his fist and slid his gaze across the darkness. Then execute them on the spot. Now we're talking about Biansha horsemen who are captive, or are we talking about the captives of the Biansha horsemen who are the bandits? Because like I said, I wondered if they would try to keep the bandits. Maybe not at first. I don't know. There's another scene break. The sky cleared by morning. Yeah, that's a good point. Blue, you said, I do love that we have a protagonist who takes absolutely no chances for once. And that's true. Of course he's gonna say we gotta execute them, because that's, to not do that is taking a big chance. The sky cleared by morning. Li Xiong crouched beside Gedal's body, looking as if he was trying to solve some puzzle. He poked at Gedal's arm, examining that poisonous scorpion at length. Fei Sheng came over and gave Li Xiong a light kick to the boot. Master gave orders to clear away the bodies. Why aren't you letting them take it? Pulling Gedal's arm up, Li Xiong pointed angrily at the scorpion tattoo. Why does he have a scorpion too? He can't have a scorpion. Fei Sheng opened his mouth to make fun of the silly lad, but the word stirred something in his mind. He crouched down beside Li Xiong. Why can't he have a scorpion? Have you seen this before? Li Xiong pointed to the back of his own neck and answered, My dogga has one right here. A chill ran down Fei Sheng's spine. Heart in his mouth and cold sweat trickling down his neck, he asked, Lei Jingzhe? When did he have it tattooed? Why was there no word about it on Mount Luo? Li Xiong tugged at his hair, trying his best to think. I don't remember. He got it a long time ago. He already had it when he raised me. There are lots of scorpions in Gedal. When my dogga took me there, he wanted me to get one too. Gedal. Fei Sheng sprang up and raced toward the carriage. Shen Zichuan was still resting. He had drained this morning's medicine like it was water. Ding Tao, keeping guard outside the carriage, heard Shen Zichuan cough several times. A medicinal smell wafted out, but no one dared lift the curtains to look inside. Fei Sheng didn't dare either, but this was a matter of great importance. He placed a hand on the wooden frame and called out soft, Master, Master. Shen Zichuan slept lightly. In fact, he'd never truly drifted off. The real pain of the injuries on his back from being thrown was only taking hold now, putting him in so much agony he couldn't lie flat. He was merely leaning on his side against the pillow. He removed the jade earring and wiped it until it was completely clean. Only then did he open his eyes and make a sound of acknowledgement. Even more cautious now, Fei Sheng reported what he had just heard. Silence came from the interior of the carriage for a long interval, before Fei Sheng heard the rustling sound of cloth, as if hands were sliding into sleeves. After another moment, a folding fan lifted the curtain. With the fan held in his left hand and earring gleaming in his right ear, the expression in Shen Zichuan's eyes was sharper than ever. The battle last night had been desperate. No one had paid much attention to the bodies. As they came upon Li Xiong now, standing beside the corpse of Gedal, one thing they had overlooked became instantly apparent. In terms of physique, Gedal was essentially what Li Xiong would grow up to become. They were both powerfully built, far stronger than the average man. Their shoulders and arms were broad, and their muscles rippled with explosive power. Shen Zichuan used his folding fan to roll Gedal's arm over. Is it exactly the same? Squatting again, Li Xiong nodded sullenly. But Daga's scorpion is a little smaller. Strip the corpses, Shen Zichuan said to Fei Sheng. All of them. Exactly, Li Xiong is baby. A short time later, the Bianchao horsemen who had perished lay stark naked across the ground. Fei Sheng examined them one by one. All of them had scorpion tattoos. The scorpions were all in different spots, places that were hard to discover. The back of the neck, middle of the stomach, side of the waist, or even behind the ear. And they were all on the upper body. Turning to the remaining squad commander from the Libei Armored Cavalry, Shen Zichuan asked, Have you seen scorpions like this on the battlefield in Libei? The commander studied the tattoos and solemnly shook his head. I've never seen anything like this. The 12 tribes do tattoo their bodies, but those are either tribal totems or symbols of meritorious service. No tribe takes the scorpion as their totem among the 12 tribes of Bianxia. This has something to do with Lei Jingzhe and the bandits teaming up with this Bianxia tribe. Seemingly. Shen Zichuan felt a creeping sense of foreboding. This squad had been supplied with weapons that could deal a serious blow to the Libei Armored Cavalry. Should those hammers become prevalent on the battlefield, the standoff on the front lines would be broken, the generals of Libei caught off guard, and put at a sudden disadvantage. And if they were really establishing a squad based on the physical standards Li Xiong exemplified, it wouldn't matter, even if they lost their battle steeds. If they breached Libei, not only Zhongbo, but the whole empire would be in imminent danger. Scorpions are everywhere in Gedal. Daga called them our brothers. They are our friends. As Li Xiong spoke, he looked at Shen Zichuan. They have many small scorpions, too. They're very young and never come out to play. Fei Sheng, Shen Zichuan said, make a drawing of this scorpion and have it sent to Libei. Not just Libei, but Cizhou and Chazhou, too. Tell Zhou Gui and Luo Mu to start inspecting the commoners in those territories immediately. He paused, then said, making the words deliberate, especially the garrison troops. Lei Jingzhe was a native of the Zhou Empire. In the years Zhongbo had been left to its own devices, anyone could move freely in and out as he had. They could easily sneak the scorpions into Zhongbo, or even further. I keep having flashbacks to another Danmei that has a scorpion, like, scorpion tribe. But these scorpions might be scarier, to be honest. What struck Shen Zichuan at this moment was not merely the fact of the war, but the more insidious decay of government that had started during the reign of Yongyi. From the Zhongbo troops' defeat and the massacre of the cities to Xiao Jiming's poisoning, from Feng Yisheng's death in battle to Lu Guangbai's desertion. They had been focusing their attention on Chudu and the noble clans, but following the military provisions case, that explanation seemed increasingly inadequate. Xue Xiuzhuo wished to revitalize the empire. Forcing Lu Guangbai to desert did him no good. Considering the tension building between Chudu and Libei at the time, why would Chudu have been so careless with Qidong's military provisions? Shen Zichuan sifted through his memories. The scene flashed through his mind, as if he was once again standing in the scorching heat of the Chudu summer. Who had delivered the relay report to Wei Huaigu's desk? The one that had forced him to take the blame for the disaster of the moldy grain and sealed his fate. Shen Zichuan was suddenly taken by a fit of coughing. He clutched the blue handkerchief and covered his mouth and nose. This onset was so violent it not only startled Ding Tao, even Fei Sheng's face turned pale. Master! Fei Sheng reached for Shen Zichuan's arm to support him. Escort the military supplies back to Zizhou, Shen Zichuan said from behind the handkerchief. There's no need for the armored cavalry to escort us any farther. Leave a few men with me. We'll head for Dunzhou today, in disguise. There was a portrait of Bai Cha in Gedal, while the prince of Jianxing's manor had been in Dunzhou. These two key locations were where it all began, tied to two people with an inextricable connection to Shen Zichuan, his bloodkin. I want Lei Jingzhe as well. Shen Zichuan's expression was cold and detached as he bit out the last word. Alive. That's the end of the chapter. What a good chapter. What an epic... Just, what an epic moment. You said, Blue, you said you keep seeing me staring at the camera like I'm in the office. I am not always aware that I'm doing that. But I'm just... A lot of things are, like, coming together. And just, like, the conspiracy keeps getting deeper and deeper. And I'm like, what are we gonna find out next? That's why it's so funny, because I don't even know that I'm doing it. Yeah. Okay. We're on page 231 for chapter 169, which is called Dunzhou. Henry, you said the queer sass transcends conscious thought. Vase, you said, I'm telling you there's something sus about Xiaoqia's brother or his wife and her relatives. See, I've come to the point now where I really don't want to believe that's the case. I was thinking something was suspicious coming from within the family, but I don't want to believe it. So I don't know what to think right now. Okay, Dunzhou. The Bian Sha supply wagons, along with the bandits to push them, were placed under guard of the Libei armored cavalry for transport back to Zizhou. Shen Zichuan took some of the goods and a dozen or so embroidered uniform guard members, and disguised himself as a traveling merchant. I'm sorry, but I have to stare at the camera like I'm on The Office again, for reasons that some of you might know. Instead of heading south to Dunzhou directly, they took a detour to join the public road leading from Fanzhou to Dunzhou, as if they were traveling north, and entered the city through the west gate. Liu R, still wearing his ratty Biangu hat, followed Fei Sheng with his back so hunched his butt was sticking out. The instant his eyes started roving, the embroidered uniform guard would sandwich him in the middle of the group until he felt suffocated. He'd been Lei Jingzhe's carrier pigeon in the past, so he was familiar with the roads and well informed as to goings-on in Dunzhou. It would save a lot of trouble to have him lead the way. But this old man was crafty. In his initial attempt to escape, he had smeared his face until it was mottled and dark, and Fei Sheng had nearly missed him since he blended in with a group of bandits. Shen Zichuan took his medicine diligently. After another 5 days on the road, his cough subsided, but he still couldn't put much pressure on the 2 fingers on his right hand. Unable even to pen his own letters, he relied on Ding Tao to write to Libei and Zizhou on his behalf. Blue, you said you spent... Oh, wait, no, Henry, you said I spent like 20 seconds wondering which Danmei this was familiar from. I know, I didn't want to say what it was, but I was just like, well, some of us know this. But I mean, concluding that I'm talking about a Danmei is completely logical. Oh, Blue, you said you had the same thought when you read it on your own, but then you forgot. It's nice to be able to forget things and then have the moment all over again. When we enter the city, we'll need to first go to a broker to register the goods. Liu R tugged down the brim of his Biengu hat to hide his face, then folded his arms beneath his sleeves and said with a tilt of his head, "Things are chaotic in Duanzhou right now. Only merchants who register with the broker can enter the city and stay in the inns. Caution is the watchword here, so anyone who doesn't know the unspoken rules is automatically suspicious." Shen Zichuan's closed fan lay across his knee. He remained concealed from view within the carriage, the curtain revealing only his vague silhouette. Who owns this brokerage? The Yan clan of Hezhou. Liu R lowered his voice and shuffled closer to the carriage window. Even when Lei Chongming still had the Yan clan behind him, this place was a mess. Everyone considered Lei Chongming the one in charge, but it wasn't like he was the provincial administration commissioner or anything. Bandits like us don't have all these clerks and runners in our employ like government officials do, so we don't look too closely at anything happening among our underlings. But there were so many merchants coming and going. What if there were spies? So young Master Yan suggested Lei Chongming set up a brokerage here and hang up a sign with the name Tongming, brightly lit. The brothers who do business with the outlaw bandits know the right words to say when they enter the shop. The Yan clan abandoned us later, but Lei Chongming kept the shop running, as a show of respect to young Master Yan. The corners of Shen Zichuan's lips twitched ever so slightly. And with this, the Yan clan has all the comings and goings in Duanzhou firmly in their grasp, as well as records of every business transaction Lei Chongming ever made. I'm guessing this young Master Yan was better acquainted with the accounts of the past several years than Lei Chongming himself. The young master is a child prodigy. Liu R smacked his lips, looking out over the road. Every deal Yan Heru does himself is profitable. He may be young, but he's a mercenary man who loves money very, very much. There is no business he won't dip his fingers into. Shen Zichuan recalled the incident regarding the lawful grandson of the Shao clan. Lightly, he said, "I've heard Lei Chongming saved young Master Yan's life. There must be some reason they fell out." Throughout their journey, Liu R had spared no effort to ingratiate himself with Shen Zichuan, fearing Shen Zichuan would kill him off the instant he'd outlived his usefulness. He weighed the stakes and sold out Lei Chongming without hesitation. Yeah, Lei Chongming had an addiction, one that grew worse in recent years. The commoners in Duanzhou and Duanzhou were terrified. They didn't dare keep their children here. Those who could sent them far into the countryside. They were afraid we'd carry the children off and give them to Lei Chongming. At first, Lei Chongming kept all this from the Yan clan. But later, when he asked the brothels in Fanzhou for some young ones, the children the procuress delivered were recorded with the broker as rice and flour. The swap was uncovered in the Yan clan's audits, and young Master Yan flew into a terrible rage. Lei Chongming swore up and down he would turn over a new leaf. But how could he quit such a vice? With Cai Yu and Cha Zhou fanning the flames, it didn't take long for Yan Heru to cut him off for good. Yan Heru stopped sending monthly funds to Mount Law, and no more grain came our way. At this point, Liu R turned to face the carriage curtain. This is why we were starving over on Mount Law. Lei Jingzhe told Lei Chongming to demand grain from Sizhou. Zhou Gui had no way to resist back then, so he caved time and time again. Blue, you said I did say that QJJ is giving me everything that I wish that one novel that I won't mention now would have had time for. That's true. Like, if that series was longer, we could have had more of this type of thing. You said you like Tong Jo Ching's writing better. I've been thinking about that, and I think that I can't make a decision, and those novels are equally on par for me. Obviously, I still have to finish this one, but if things continue to go as well as they're going, I think that's going to stay the same for me. When the emperor passed away and the marquis rebelled, Lei Chongming and Lei Jingzhe plotted together to rescue Han Jin and deliver him to Chudu in exchange for noble titles. No one was keeping watch over Zhongbo. If it really worked out and one of them was conferred with the title of prince or something, well, we could have become an official local army. Shen Zichuan tapped his fan with the fingertip. Lei Jingzhe is a very devoted nephew indeed. Lei Jingzhe was the mastermind behind Lei Chongming's successes. How could he have let his uncle fall from power over such a small matter as some children from Fanzhou? It was because the Yan clan cut Lei Chongming's monthly funds that the bandit chief first turned his eyes on Sizhou. He'd marched his troops to the city in such an ostentatious display, and ended up dead at Xiao Qie and Shen Zichuan's hands, as if he was merely target practice. He had obviously been set up to fail. In all probability, Lei Jingzhe had long planned to usurp his position. Perhaps, as Liu'er said, he and Lei Chongming might have gone to Han Cheng and asked for noble titles for both of them. But who was to say Han Cheng would acquiesce to such presumptuous demands? Throw Lei Chongming's insatiable greed into the mix, and it was doubtful they'd have reached any kind of agreement. Thus, Lei Jingzhe took Lei Chongming, his own maternal uncle, out of the equation, ensuring he conveniently died amid the strife without dirtying his own hands. This suggested two possibilities. Either Han Cheng was not himself a scorpion, and in that case, perhaps the scorpions were far less capable than Shen Zichuan feared. Or he was, but all the scorpions were pawns who didn't know one another, and only had to stay in place and do what they ought to complete the mission. Shen Zichuan had his own theories regarding both of these conjectures. He lost himself in thought and did not speak again. And there is a scene break. And I just want to say, that is such a good example of the sneaky shit that Tong Jo Ching does. Where here we are with Shen Zichuan as our main character, but he's such a mystery to us. It's like, by the way, I'm not going to tell you what he thought about that. I'm just going to tell you he had some thoughts, and you're not going to know for who knows how long. You're probably not going to know until the truth is actually revealed about this particular thing, what he was thinking about it. Maybe even then you won't know. You said, I love unreliable... Blue, you said, I love unreliable narrators, but this isn't even that. It's something... I guess not. It's something else. I don't even know what you call that. Henry, you said this is a heightened version of what MXTX does with Shaelion sometimes. I haven't read all of that novel, but I'm familiar enough with that already that, like, yeah, that's accurate. It was long after dark when the carriage entered the city, but Tongming Brokerage, as its name suggested, was still brightly lit. Fei Sheng brought Liu'er with him to check in and saw carriages of all sizes and colors waiting outside. There were Longyo merchants that had come from Jueshi, as well as human traffickers from Fanzhou. A hubbub of flicking abacus beads and raised voices filled this place, where every imaginable ware was on sale, and there was still a flurry of activity despite the late hour. Tongming Brokerage sat in the center of the bustle. Large lanterns hung on either side of its door, extending down the street. Taverns and stores here operated all night, with people coming and going until dawn. There were plenty of ragged beggars, but all were on the receiving ends of barked orders sending them to and fro. Prostitutes, both tender girls and women past their prime, hung on the arms of wealthy men as they came and went, pulling them into inns in hopes of scoring a free bed for the night and some meager allowance for food. Amid the surging crowd, Fei Sheng spotted a few Bian Sha faces. This place looked like it had never been touched by war. The stench of wine and meat gone sour permeated the air, jostling for prominence with the fragrance of perfumes and spices from Jueshi and the Chashi River, the whole melding into an eye-watering fusion of scents. This street was like the silver river crossing the vault of heaven. Here, the sole remaining lights of Zhongbo all converged, making the surroundings appear pitch dark in comparison. Yeah, Blue, you said, thanks, hate that, and I feel the same way about all of it. With so many people around, Fei Sheng didn't dare be too confident or careless. Armed with the tips Liu R had given him, he stepped inside the brokerage and looked around for someone to check them in. The wares they'd brought were beans and other miscellaneous grain from Huaizhou. The busy shop clerk went down the line, one visitor at a time, according to their order of arrival. He moved quickly, and the young assistant following him was even quicker in noting it all down. When the shop clerk came before Shen Zichun's carriage, he didn't presumptuously lift the curtain, but bowed toward it earnestly. My lords from the west are most discerning connoisseurs of trade. Since you've made your way to our Dunzhou, we'd never be poor hosts. Just allow us to lay everything out clearly first. I'm sure my lord is fatigued from the journey. Please treat this small delay as if it is merely entertainment to relieve your boredom. Shen Zichun was silent behind the curtain. This shop clerk had seen his fair share of traveling merchants and had dealings with magnates and bandits alike. He knew some of these customers could be prickly indeed. He stood firm and said with a neutral expression, "Once my lord enters the city, whom you deal with is up to you. No one may interfere, for it's nobody else's business. All who come and go are guests, and all of us are friends. Dunzhou is an out-of-the-way place, so let's all look out for one another. If my lord requires mediation on any issue, feel free to send someone to the shop. No matter where you hail from, our staff will be standing by to assist the moment my lord so commands. However, I must make one rule clear to you. Any goods bought or sold in the city must be recorded in the shop, and each one must be a genuine product. By registering yourself with us, you may consider yourself verified by the Yan clan. In Dunzhou, we share our prestige, our wealth, and our good names." Henry, I don't know why, but the beans are making me laugh. There is something funny about the beans. It shouldn't be, but there is. When the shop clerk was done speaking, he bowed once more to the carriage, then turned and gestured them ahead. "A courtyard has been specially prepared for you in the back. Please choose from the attendants as you please, and we have all kinds of fresh, seasonal fruits available for your enjoyment. As long as you remain in Dunzhou, ask for anything you'd like to eat or enjoy. Our Yan clan will see to everything." Fei Sheng was rendered speechless. The Shi clan might be wealthy, but they were nowhere near this generous. This Yan Heru was truly a force to be reckoned with. Rumor had it that he treasured money as much as his own life, but that he also spent it like water. He was an ostentatious young man who loved nothing more than gold. He had invested all his capital into Dunzhou and won the hearts of the traveling merchants here. It was small wonder the Shi clan's shops couldn't break into the eastern market. The clerk wasted no more time on superfluous talk and announced, "The 16th courtyard of TNG welcomes its distinguished guests." The carriage clattered over stone as it rolled forward, guided into the courtyard by a specially deployed attendant. Face to the window in the darkness, Shen Zichuan heard a melody drifting from the upper floors of a tavern. Through the curtains, the dazzling kaleidoscope of colored lanterns blended into waves of shimmering, multi-hued water. So gorgeous, he was captivated by the sight. When Liu R entered the courtyard, he clicked his tongue in wonder. He took his shoes off before stepping on the porch, and held them to his chest as he followed Fei Sheng, casting glances all around. Damn, how much silver went into this place. Fei Sheng peered down the covered walkway. No less than $1 million, I'm sure. Liu R had never seen this much wealth in his life, and for that matter, neither had Fei Sheng. It was common knowledge that, during the reign of Xiande, the military budget allocated to Li Bei and Qidong was capped at 2 million total. The imperial court officials had reduced their own salaries, scrimping and saving to provide for the Li Bei armored cavalry and Qidong garrison troops. The imperial court was so impoverished the officials were tearing out their hair. Yet here on the fringes of the empire, Yan Heru was spending hundreds of thousands of taels with a wave of his hand, merely for the sake of entertaining his guests. The journey had been a difficult one. Afraid to let Shen Zichuan tax himself a moment longer, Fei Sheng watched him as he drank his medicine, then called for a subordinate to prepare water and make the bed. He didn't dare urge Shen Zichuan to take a rest himself. He quietly instructed Ding Tao to suggest it. Fei Sheng called no attendants from the Yan clan to serve in the courtyard, but set layer upon layer of the embroidered uniform guard around it. He placed himself in the innermost circle, standing guard beneath the eaves of Shen Zichuan's room. Nor were guards on duty limited to the ground. More were stationed along the ridges of the upturned eaves. After sleeping his fill in the carriage during the day, Ding Tao now sat among them, writing and drawing with Li Xiong. The warning Xiao Qia had given Fei Sheng before they set off echoed in his ears. If Shen Zichuan so much as coughed in the night, Fei Sheng's heart would leap into his mouth. Shen Zichuan hadn't been in Duanzhou since he was a child, yet for some reason, his nightmares were especially ferocious that night. The Chasha's sinkhole had disappeared, and the Prince of Jianqing's manor had appeared in its place. His old, deaf, and mute nanny sat under those dark, gloomy eaves, while Shen Zichuan stood alone in the dimly lit room, his throat dry. But the table was so very high. He stood on tiptoe to reach for the teacup, and ended up tipping it onto the ground. Porcelain shattered at his feet, and exploded in all directions, cutting his finger. In the dream, Shen Zichuan began to sob. He felt inexplicably upset, as if he had broken something incredibly precious. But no matter how he cried, the woman merely focused on her embroidery with her back to him. Again and again she raised her hand, before bringing the needle down, her shadow stretching across the floor toward Shen Zichuan's feet, like an eerie, long-limbed monster. She repeated the motion over and over, everything around her shrouded in awful silence. Shen Zichuan's finger burned with the searing pain. He anxiously clutched his robes and wrapped the hem of his sleeve around the cut. Blood bloomed through the fabric, like a camellia broken apart after falling onto the snow. Fresh, vivid red. God, the prose. That is the end of the chapter. I think I'm gonna go ahead and take my 10-minute break now. And when we come back, we will be on page 241 for chapter 170, which is called Monster. That was a very interesting scene. I will just say that, because one thing I've been wanting is more like information about Shen Zichuan's upbringing. And I wonder if we're gonna start like while he's here in Dunzhou, are we gonna get like more of his dreams and his thoughts surrounding that? Because that would be really interesting. And now I'm just like what happened to you? Aside from the Chasha sinkhole, like what happened in your life? So yeah, I'm gonna take a break. I will be back shortly. Oh, hello, I am back. I think I got here just as the little thing started replaying. I was like, wait a minute, it's been 10 minutes. So, why does this always happen? I don't know why. I go on a break and the video from YouTube gets super behind. And then it makes me think that it's lagging, but it's not. Henry, in what Discord channel did you share that art? Because I want to look at that later. So, where were we? We were on page 241 for chapter 170, Monster. The two injured fingers on Shen Zichuan's right hand trembled violently, the blaze of pain jolting him awake. Wearily, he raised his right arm and tried to spread his fingers, only to realize his index and middle fingers were so stiff he couldn't move them. The window paper glowed with the indistinct light of day. To think he had slept so long. It's a good thing. You need sleep. Oh, thank you, Blue, for adding me. Shen Zichuan lowered his arm and let the sweat trickle down his temples. After a moment, he rolled over and got up. His injured fingers curled as he put on his clothes. At the first sound of movement, Fei Sheng turned and beckoned to the subordinate holding the medicine. A guard opened the door, and Fei Sheng lifted the hem of his robe and strode inside, where Shen Zichuan was washing up at the copper basin. "Master," Fei Sheng said softly as he stepped closer, "we called for a physician early this morning. He's waiting outside now. Shall we summon him in to take a look?" Shen Zichuan dipped his handkerchief back into the basin. In a rare show of compliance, he said, "Go ahead." Delighted, Fei Sheng called at once for the physician. As they waited, he said to Shen Zichuan, "We released the bandits last night. Thanks to Liuar's connections, the news came in quickly. Master, Lei Jingzhe is right here in the city." Oh dear, great. Shen Zichuan moved to stand by the door and looked back pensively at Fei Sheng. If Lei Jingzhe was here now, it suggested he knew the route of Bian Sha's supply convoy by heart, as well as precisely how long the route took, even accounting for potential delays. Only a day or two after the squad failed to arrive at its destination, Lei Jingzhe had set out for Dunzhou. He likely wanted to get to the bottom of who had robbed the Scorpions. "The supply wagons we confiscated are being escorted to Sizhou by the Libei armored cavalry," Fei Sheng commented. "News can't have spread that fast. In any case, they've likely entered Sizhou already. So whether or not Lei Jingzhe learns what happened, the cargo and men are ours now." Fei Sheng stepped aside and watched as Shen Zichuan drank his medicine. "But it'll be difficult to catch Lei Jingzhe alive in the city. Master, we've heard there are still 400 Scorpions watching over the other bandits they took captive. We should consider those 400 Lei Jingzhe's own soldiers. We have too few men." Shen Zichuan grimaced faintly at the bitterness of the medicine. "Lei Jingzhe has yet to put Mount Luo and Duanzhou in order. He lacks manpower. Most likely, he smuggled those armaments out of Zhongbo to ingratiate himself with the Biansha tribes. The 400 Scorpions in the city of Duanzhou might not necessarily listen to his orders. Besides, we came to Duanzhou to do business, not to rob people. We can take our time." He handed the empty bowl back to Fei Sheng. "Things have been quiet in Sizhou lately. I have all the time in the world to play with him." When Fei Sheng took the bowl, he spied Shen Zichuan's hand dangling from within his sleeve. The color drained from his face, and he dropped to his knees. "Master, your hand is broken. We were in such a rush during our journey. How could I be so blind? To think I never..." Time was of the essence. It's not like we would have found a decent physician on the way. Seeing Fei Sheng's panic, Shen Zichuan reassured him. "It's just 2 fingers, and they're broken, not severed. I'll let the physician set them with steel braces and have them bandaged. They'll be fine after half a year of healing." Shen Zichuan responded nonchalantly, but listening to him downplay his injuries filled Fei Sheng with trepidation. Whether out of genuine sentiment or feigned sincerity, Fei Sheng's eyes reddened as he placed his palms flat on the floor and said in a trembling voice, "When the master is wounded, his servant deserves death for letting it happen. What good is a guard at his master's side if he allows his master to be injured?" He raised a hand and slapped himself several times on the cheek. "It's because we're so useless that Master had to come to our rescue personally. Master, I beseech you to bestow our deserved punishments." as the leader of the other embroidered uniform guard members. By kneeling here and slapping himself without the slightest hesitation, Fei Sheng was effectively slapping the faces of those men outside. He lowered himself to make clear to everyone here and in the courtyard that this incident should be taken as a wake-up call. Such an oversight could not be made again. Shen Zichuan must never get hurt. From the moment they had arrived in Zhongbo, after being forsaken by Han Chung and rejected by Xiao Qie, Shen Zichuan had been their only remaining master. Chao Tianya had his own knack for managing his subordinates. He was more well-liked than Fei Sheng among the men, but he was too uninhibited. Blue, I noticed something you said. Rare show of compliance as he's focusing on the handkerchief. You were just worried that Xiao Qie will scold you if you don't let the doctor examine you. That was such a good catch, and you are so right. At times, he seemed to treat Shen Zichuan more as a friend than a master. Fei Sheng had gained much from Shen Zichuan deploying Chao Tianya to Yao Wenyu's side. Could Yao Wenyu's body heal quickly? If not, Chao Tianya might stay with Yao Wenyu for several years. Shen Zichuan had given his vacated position to Fei Sheng, which to Fei Sheng's mind was a hint. He had to accomplish in this position what Chao Tianya could not. He had to make it clear to the current embroidered uniform guard that it was only out of respect for Ji Gong that Shen Zichuan did not pursue their dereliction of duty, and that they must never ever repeat the mistake. Fei Sheng wouldn't twitch a finger without the nod from Shen Zichuan. Likewise, so long as Shen Zichuan gave the command, Fei Sheng would see it through to the very end, good or ill. He had a far greater awareness of his place than Chao Tianya. Fei Sheng was Shen Zichuan's guard, not his friend. Unlike his predecessor, Fei Sheng would never privately report Shen Zichuan's injury to Xiao Qie. Do we think this is actually why Shen Zichuan assigned Chao Tianya to Yao Wenyu? Because we really don't know. We have Fei Sheng's conjecture about it, and we know that Shen Zichuan did it, but we don't really know why Shen Zichuan actually did it. And I was like, wouldn't it be funny if Shen Zichuan had some inkling that Chao Tianya was interested in Yao Wenyu? But I don't actually think that's what it was, but I don't really know. I just don't know. The embroidered uniform guard followed suit and knelt, their faces burning with sympathetic pain as they listened to the sharp sounds of Fei Sheng's slaps. Fei Sheng smacked himself until his cheeks turned red. He had raised his hand for yet another slap when a folding fan intercepted the blow. There can be no progress without pain. As long as you learn from this mistake, it's all right. Shen Zichuan withdrew the fan he still held in his left hand. Those in the courtyard are good men. Mistakes will be punished in due time. I'll make my own arrangements when we return to Zhezhou. You may rise. That Shen Zichuan did not let Fei Sheng continue to abuse himself meant he had no intention of humiliating them. This man accorded scholars their due respect, and he didn't treat the embroidered uniform guard shabbily either. Their monthly salaries were issued in a timely fashion, and paid in ready silver according to Chudu's standard, and they resided in spacious, well-lit rooms. What was more, they had Ji Gong close by to give them martial arts pointers at any time. At first, they had assumed Shen Zichuan would be a capricious man and a difficult master, but over time, they realized he in fact had set preferences, and meted out both reward and punishment fairly. His commands were decisive and straightforward, and he never vented his anger to his subordinates. Fei Sheng wiped his tears and kowtowed a few more times before rising from the floor and taking his position beside him. Ding Tao, staring blankly at the unfolding scene, felt a terrible wave of guilt. The physician happened to arrive a moment later. So Fei Sheng lifted the curtains and invited the man in. Both of Shen Zichuan's fingers had indeed been broken, but it was thankfully only a fracture. As he expected, the physician set them and secured his hand with steel braces. With half a year of recuperation, they would be more or less healed. My lord mustn't wield a blade or draw a bow while they heal. The physician was an old man. As the fee they'd paid him was generous, he made a special point of giving further instruction when he got up. The injury went untreated for quite a few days. It's fortunate you didn't delay it any longer. Otherwise, I couldn't have set them back into place even with the braces. My lord seems to be in poor health, and the weather is unpredictable in the 8th month. You must take more care with your meals and attire. Don't fall ill again. The old physician had twitched aside his sleeves to pack his medical case when he remembered one more point. Does my lord have trouble sleeping? I see you've come to do business. But taxing your brain wears on both your mind and body. No one can remain healthy if they're haunted by nightmares for a long period of time. I'll get you a brocade pouch and fill it with some calming incense. You can put it under your pillow at night to see if it helps. Fei Sheng bent to take up the physician's case and see him out, leaving Shen Zichuan with Ding Tao nearby. In the brief, peaceful silence that followed, Shen Zichuan studied his right hand. His broken fingers were bound together so securely he couldn't even stretch them, much less think about grasping his blade. It was a true stroke of luck that they were still in one piece. But why would he dream of the Prince of Jianxing's manor? Last night's dream fluttered before his mind's eye again, like a jaundiced, worn-out rag. Only the nanny's back was visible because Shen Zichuan no longer remembered how she looked. He had cried so sadly for that cup of water, but had it really been for that? Shen Zichuan let his arm fall and slowly leaned back. He ran his gaze along the half-lowered bamboo blinds to the ground outside, where he could see the dark shadows of the trees. He sifted through his memory of the dream, attempting to lay every scene out for deeper scrutiny. This is exactly what I wanted. I don't think we're going to get much now, but I don't know. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll be surprised. The deaf and mute nanny sat under the eaves. The courtyard was tiny, and the direction of the house faced was not ideal. Once dusk fell, the interior dimmed quickly. Shen Zichuan was still small, so small he didn't have to bend to peer under the curtains into the inner chamber. He wanted to drink that cup of water so much. His throat was on fire, but he couldn't reach it. He stood on tiptoe. Shen Zichuan tilted his head back slightly. He stood on tiptoe. This wasn't the first time this had happened. He knew the teacup might fall to the ground, so while he reached up, he glanced into the inner chamber. But the room was too dark. The windows were shut, and that half-lowered beaded curtain was like a dead thing. It remained still and unmoving, a veil of white in the darkness. Shen Zichuan frowned and pushed harder, as if in a trance. Why did he have to look in? The young Shen Zichuan stood on tiptoe and peered over the edge of the table to look at that tangle of darkness. He blinked several times, gazed steady, but couldn't help stretching his fingers out to touch the rim of the teacup. Someone stirred in the darkness. Attention diverted. Shen Zichuan accidentally brushed the teacup aside and off the table. The sound of the cup shattering was so clear, as if it had smashed right beside his ear. Startled, the figure in the inner chamber turned around. The eerie shadow of the nanny who sewed and sewed soundlessly grabbed Shen Zichuan by the foot. And it was at this moment that Shen Zichuan saw a terror-stricken face in the dark. Shen Zichuan sucked in a breath. He came back to his senses and found he had unconsciously clenched his right hand into a fist, Agony throbbed through his broken fingers. The autumn weather today was hot, but Shen Zichuan's back was drenched in cold sweat. He had seen Shen Wei. His father's face had been contorted with a terror so jarring, Shen Zichuan jolted to his feet. Irritated, he relaxed his right hand and turned toward the shadows of the trees under the eaves. He couldn't recall what exactly Shen Wei had been doing. Why had he been so panic-stricken? It had been too dark in that inner chamber. Shen Zichuan hadn't been able to see a thing. Shen Wei's face had seemed to be trapped in a thick black mass of shadows. But no matter how he cast his mind back, he made no progress. Of course. We're not going to know anything yet, okay? We just know that Shen Wei was terrified. That's something, but of what? He felt as if he was stuck in time, frozen on the sight of Shen Wei's face. Fucking hell. Usually, Shen Zichuan kept his volatility locked firmly under an icy demeanor. But not this time. The revulsion in his expression was an indicator that he was already on the brink of losing control. He closed his eyes against the sunlight, feeling like a trapped beast, sweat beating at his temples. In the dream, his cut finger was bleeding, staining his robe. Once again, pale white juxtaposed with vivid red. The beaded curtain hung limp, then swung violently as it reared back to life. The scene flashed by. That strange shadow grabbed hold of Shen Zichuan. His finger was seeping red. The old woman's hands moved over her never-ending embroidery, as her arms stretched longer and longer, until the shadow mutated into a scorpion brandishing its tail. Crack! Shen Zichuan snapped back to alertness. Ding Tao's legs gave out, and he fell backward, staring up wide-eyed at Shen Zichuan as though at a stranger. All the hair on his body seemed to stand on end. His candy tumbled onto the ground, where it bumped into Shen Zichuan's broken fan. Okay, so he's standing there looking at, inspecting his dream, and he just broke his own fan. Oh, goodness. Leaning over, Shen Zichuan retrieved the candy and held it out to Ding Tao. But Ding Tao didn't reach for it. Instead, he shrank back in fear, fleeing from Shen Zichuan's shadow. Got a lot of people fleeing from shadows. Shen Zichuan's throat bobbed. He felt like a demonic creature flayed of its skin, thoroughly exposed under the stinging sunlight. He looked up, the pale column of his neck revealing his fragility, and as the wind huffed at his sleeves, he laughed into the endless stillness and gently tossed the candy away. And that's the end of the chapter. So what this sounds like here, if I'm understanding right, is that the scorpions were a thing when he was a kid, too. Because it says the shadow mutated into a scorpion brandishing its tail. So was Shen Wei terrified of someone from the scorpions? Or was he one of the scorpions? I'm not sure, like, what the shadow is exactly in this case. But I feel like the scorpion thing is important. It's like a key to Shen Zichuan's memories of this time. Like, Henry, you said, what are the odds he's realized more than the narration is telling us, so he has fair reason to go insane? I mean, he already does, but you get it. Right. Like, what if something just clicked with him and we're not going to know about it until who knows when? God. Blue, you said it could not be. What could not be? Also, the name of that chapter was Monster, so of course Shen Zichuan kind of believes himself to be the monster in this moment. So, we're on page 249 for chapter 171, which is called Tattoo. Ding Tao was petrified. When his eyes met Shen Zichuan's, he was sure for a moment he would die like Gedal had. Oh, Blue, you're saying Shen Zichuan hiding things from us. Yes, you were being sarcastic. Yep. Okay. Okay, I was like, I thought you had like an idea of something that could be going on, and you were like, it couldn't be. Like, no. Yeah. There's always something. The look in Shen Zichuan's eyes when he killed the Scorpion Commander had been just the same as the one that locked on him now. Ding Tao wanted nothing more than to run. When Shen Zichuan handed him the candy, he lost the courage to even raise his hand. It was silent out on the walkway. Shen Zichuan had retreated further into the room. The harsh sunlight scorched Ding Tao's skin. He had yet to recover his wits. The feeling was indescribable, but one thing was certain. That was not the young master he knew. Ding Tao wiped his eyes with both hands. He wanted to pick up the candy, but while he sat dazed, it had melted from the heat, and the delicate sweetness of osmanthus had attracted a swarm of ants. Ding Tao remained kneeling where he was. Though he didn't know why, tears began to course down his cheeks. After the interruption, Shen Zichuan could no longer piece his memories into a coherent whole. It had been too dark in the dream. He simply couldn't remember any more details. He stood behind the bamboo blinds and heard Ding Tao sobbing outside. God, yeah, Henry, I was thinking about the ants. Shen Zichuan told himself he must not dwell too deeply on this dream. He had to sieve truth from falsehood as soon as possible. Were the contents of this dream something he had genuinely seen, or were they a figment of his imagination? For 6 years, he had been tormented by nightmares. He knew best that such dreams were an uneasy mixture of reality and fiction. When he used to dream about the Chasha sinkhole, the sight that greeted him in the pit would change according to his state of mind. After his injury in Chajo, Shen Zichuan had dreamed he was lying in the sinkhole himself. It had been the prelude to his mistrust toward his own body, and the realization that he had begun to fear death. Frequent nightmares could distort memories. In truth, Shen Zichuan was no longer certain of the words Jimu had said to him before he died. Dangerous, Shen Zichuan thought, self-mocking. It was only Shen Wei. I know he's mocking himself for thinking of Shen Wei as dangerous. But we don't know what Shen Wei was like towards him when he was a kid. He was barely around, but what was he like when he was around? Was he around at all? Like, I don't know. It's just kind of... Liu R's network was handier than expected. His informants were hidden all over the city, in every street and alleyway. As long as they were paid, they would become Fei Sheng's eyes and ears. He could snoop into every nook and cranny of Dunzhou without setting foot outside. And what they learned of Lei Jingzhe's movements was intriguing, to say the least. Lei Jingzhe has been searching for 3 days in a row now. He's checking through all the goods, entering and exiting the city, Fei Sheng said behind Shen Zichuan, his voice low. Master, could he know we're here? Today, Shen Zichuan was wearing a black sun hat with a wide brim and a hanging sheer veil, a style common among scholars in Chudu. And there's not art of this? Excuse me? As he was looking for us, he would be checking the carriages of the merchants coming and going, rather than the goods themselves. These military supplies must have been important to Lei Jingzhe, or he wouldn't have rushed over to Dunzhou to check on them himself. Shen Zichuan's best guess was that Lei Jingzhe wanted to exchange the grain and weapons for something of equivalent value from the 12 tribes of Biansha. Yet instead of searching to the west, toward Sizhou, he was wandering around the city of Dunzhou. Shen Zichuan leaned on the railing of the tavern's mezzanine and surveyed the establishment from top to bottom through the sheer veil, taking his time to organize his thoughts. If he's checking the goods, he thinks those supply wagons will return to Dunzhou. He tapped his fingertips on the rail. How strange. How could Lei Jingzhe be so sure the supply wagons would return to Dunzhou? The powers in Zhongbo with the ability to capture a convoy of this size were few and far between. Sizhou should be one of the prime suspects. Shen Zichuan had been prepared for the possibility of answering Lei Jingzhe's challenge openly, but incredibly, Lei Jingzhe hadn't suspected him at all. Master, even if Lei Jingzhe thought someone else snatched the supplies, who would send them back to Dunzhou? Fei Sheng could make neither heads nor tails of it. There are more scorpions stationed here. Bringing the supplies back would be walking right into a trap. You're right. Shen Zichuan, who had been having difficulty sleeping in recent days, wearily massaged his brow. Who on earth would steal supplies, then send them back? Made no sense at all. The informants we planted in Dunzhou have all been useless because it's too chaotic here. Fei Sheng plucked up his courage and asked, could it be that a bandit who's unwilling to defect to the Biansha is scheming against Lei Jingzhe? Shen Zichuan thought it over, then shook his head. Since the Mount Luo bandits fractured, there hasn't been a leader who could unite them. Ding Yo and Liu Er were both captured because they never thought of joining forces to oppose Lei Jingzhe. With their numbers, they could pull off small robberies, but they would never have the guts to lay their hands on something of this size. Military armaments were somewhat unique. They couldn't be divided up and hidden like grain. Given that these wagons required hundreds of bandits to push them, it was obvious how heavy they were. No minor bandits could have absconded with them. Shen Zichuan himself was only able to move them because he had let the bandits live, and had the Libe armored cavalry tagging along to hold them in check. Otherwise, he wouldn't have easily gotten his hands on such a prize. The whole situation was so bizarre it verged on ridiculous. Yet Fei Sheng didn't dare laugh. He racked his brains, wishing Mr. Cheng Feng or Yuan Zhuo were present. Then he wouldn't have needed to speak up. But with no one else beside Shen Zichuan, Fei Sheng would look like a blockhead if he merely stood without moving. He thought hard for a moment and offered, could it be? A commotion downstairs cut him off. Shen Zichuan lifted the sheer veil and squinted into the main hall. From their 5th floor perch, they had a fine view of what transpired below. This particular tavern belonged to the Yan clan. Shen Zichuan had gotten a tip Lei Jingzhe would come here tonight to entertain someone, though the identity of this person was unknown. Their informants hadn't been able to tell them, but Shen Zichuan had a good guess who it would be. The scorpions. Fei Sheng lowered his voice. Lei Jingzhe brought the scorpions. Wait, who was he going to entertain? It wouldn't have been Lei Jingzhe, right? No, yeah, that's right, because yeah, of course, they had a falling out. Well, he had a falling out with the brother. But anyway, I'm like, who would he be entertaining? I'm not that sharp, Shen Zichuan. You just have to tell me what you're thinking. Shen Zichuan looked down at Lei Jingzhe, who had apparently recovered from his injuries. His hair was cropped short. One could hardly distinguish him from the Biansha scorpions crowding around him. At this distance, Shen Zichuan couldn't get a clear look at the tattoo on Lei Jingzhe's neck. It seemed Lei Jingzhe had urgent matters to attend to. He strode across the hall and hurried up the stairs. If he's just here for a feast, Fei Sheng said, furrowing his brow, then that's quite the procession he's brought along with him, isn't it? There were plenty of merchants in the building, but none of them dared stand in Lei Jingzhe's way. He had indeed brought a large group, at least 30 men. A few of them followed him up the stairs while the rest took their seats in the main hall. Scattered throughout the hall in their various disguises, the embroidered uniform guard kept their eyes on Lei Jingzhe while they drank, made merry, and even brushed past him. Shen Zichuan took a sip of his tea, watching as Lei Jingzhe climbed the stairs to the opposite side of the 5th-floor mezzanine where he was sitting. When you get back, give Liu'er some money. Reward him for pinpointing the location. Fei Sheng nodded. The party on the opposite side of the floor lowered the bamboo blinds to deter prying eyes. The handful of men Lei Jingzhe brought upstairs stood guard outside. Fei Sheng, who had extraordinary eyesight, studied the men's bodies for scorpion tattoos by the light of the lanterns. Almost an hour later, all the lanterns in the building had been lit. The party behind the blinds called for food to be served, and waiters wove in and out of the partitioned area. Fei Sheng shifted his position several times, but the screen on the other side had been too cleverly placed. He couldn't find a crack to look through. Lei Jingzhe's feast went on for a long time, from the early evening till late at night. Even then, they still hadn't called it a day. Shen Zichuan had finished an entire pot of tea and was leaning back sleepily in his chair. Another 2 hours passed, yet the vibrant atmosphere inside, rather than evaporating, seemed to only become more raucous. Typical of a Yan clan establishment, Fei Sheng reminded Shen Zichuan in a whisper. This is a signal for the various merchants to have fun among themselves. Shen Zichuan breathed an acknowledgement and cracked his eyes open to look downstairs from his own drab seat. It's a free market here. The Yan clan plays mediator between the various parties and collects their commission. In a little while, send my order to sell the grain we brought with us. Human traffickers. Fei Sheng swept a keen eye over the people below. That's a madam from Fanzhou. The woman he pointed out was a rotund, heavily made-up woman decked out in flamboyant excess. When she had come to Duanzhou in the past, it was for the specific purpose of bringing children for Lei Chongming. She had never dealt with any other merchants. But the Yan clan's schism with Lei Chongming had thwarted her business, and she had reluctantly switched to selling women she'd taken from the various prefectures of Zhongbo. In the hardest years, a dough of grain could be exchanged for an entire family, young and old. Master, Fei Sheng began, this madam's name is Tui Qing. We dug into her background while monitoring the price of commodities in Fanzhou. She and Lei Chongming go back a long way. She hails from Duanzhou, and even before Zhongbo's fall, she was working as a procuress. Later, she moved to Fanzhou and continued to ply her trade there. Lei Chongming himself forked over the deposit for her brothel. This was why she was happy to take the risk of trading in children. Grasping her handkerchief, Tui Qing turned to squeeze through a group of merchants. No one would dare take advantage of her here. On the contrary, she occasionally found ways to get her hands on whomever she took a fancy to. As an old hand in the 3 prefectures of Duanzhou and Fanzhou, who had been in her trade for a long time. She had connections with men like Lei Chongming and Cai Yu, but had yet to board a big ship like the Yan clan. Yeah, Blue, I'm in agreement with you. Hey, so let's roast them. And you don't mean verbally. Yes, let's literally roast them, please. Cui Ching's generous figure squeezed a few men out of the way when she sat down. She crossed her legs and leaned casually against the table. The fair-faced man at her heels knelt to light her pipe. She tilted her head to take a long drag, then blew out a puff of smoke. Has my nephew not come down yet? Cui Ching glanced toward the upper floors. They're taking such a long time. Even if he was having a tumble in the sheets, he should be done by now, much less a meal. What fine wares has the madam brought this time? Asked the merchant sitting nearest her. Let's have a look. If we see something suitable, we'd be keen too. Bah. Cui Ching examined the gold and jade bracelets on her right wrist. Are you worthy of fine wares? The girls we brought this time aren't tawdry whores worth a few dozen silver. These are tender virgins in the prime of their youth. If this were Chudu, you could forget about touching them for anything short of a few hundred taels. How is a virgin worth this sum? A whore is a whore. They ought to cost more the more seasoned they are. Men like you deserve to fool around in these lousy two-bit brothels. Cui Ching stroked her fair-faced companion's cheek with one lacquered fingernail and cackled. In the old days, when Duan Zhou was still the money spinner of Great Zhou, all the girls in my stable were unrivaled beauties. When we used to rank courtesans, which of those cheap sluts from other brothels was ever able to beat my girls? Given how pathetically Cui Ching had fled during Zhang Bo's fall, she didn't like to bring up the past. But the atmosphere tonight was good, with words of flattery thrown freely left and right. She took another drag on her pipe, looking very pleased with herself indeed, as the others clustered around her. I don't mean to boast, but in those days, girls like I brought with me today would scarcely be worthy of serving tea in my establishment. The rouge on Cui Ching's lips was a vivid scarlet, and her thick makeup concealed most of her wrinkles. From the contours of her face, one could guess she, too, had been a great beauty in her day. Come on, give us names. The top 3 in the ranks were all girls from my establishment, and each one of them married well. Cui Ching went on with a contemptuous smile. Today, prostitutes and performers are indistinguishable, but it wasn't so back then. You'd need to spend a pretty penny just to catch a glimpse of those who sold their arts, and at the height of their work, they could simply refuse to see you. Those girls were more highly prized than the little misses from rich and prominent families. My nephew up there's mother was also a girl of mine. The renowned Xiao Yin Lei of the Chashi Riverside. She married into the Zhu clan in Duanzhou. Cui Ching pinched her young man's chin and blew smoke into his face as she spoke. But those were all common girls. The one I doted on most was number 1 in my establishment. Ever heard of pure as white jade, fine as porcelain? Back then, merely putting up her name would bring the whole city of Duanzhou to our doors. The emperor himself, far away in Chudu, longed for a glimpse of her exquisite face. The surrounding merchants clapped their hands in delight. That's Bai Cha. Wrapped in spiraling wisps of smoke, Cui Ching put up her hand, eyes far away as she reveled in the memory of those glory days. She snorted and murmured, Bai Cha, do you imagine pure as white jade was empty flattery? She resembled jade and porcelain in the truest sense. If you were all here to see her now, every last one of you would kneel down to be her footrest, if she so much as furrowed her brow. Yes, Blue. Yes, Blue, I will remember that too. No one could bear to let her be sullied by the dust on the ground. The hall reeked of smoke, so thick several courtesans who were sitting with them coughed. But girls like them, who earned a living by selling their bodies, didn't dare cover their noses for fear that the patrons beside them might think they were being disdained. Every one of them endured until their powdered cheeks flushed pink, as they sat squeezed between clients, their backs tacky with sweat. Cui Ching ordered someone to fetch cards with the intention of playing some of the games that were all the rage in Chudu. Her handsome young man remained on his knees, massaging her legs. Within a few moments, one of the courtesans couldn't stand it anymore. She knitted her brows as she covered her mouth with a handkerchief to cough. The smoke smelled off to her. She took a few more sniffs, then jerked to her feet with a cry of surprise. Fire! The denizens of the hall instantly leapt up in panic. Everyone watched as billows of smoke rose. The attendants who had been serving them had already perished. Cries of alarm echoed as everyone swept silver off the tables in a frenzy and tucked the money into their robes with no regard for whose was whose. The requested cards had scattered over the ground. Cui Ching, too big to escape through the crowd, tottered on her feet as she was jostled from every direction. The hairpiece by her temple lay discarded somewhere on the floor. Open the door! Those at the front of the crowd pounded on it, shouting, Why is the door locked? Tables and chairs tipped over under the frantic mob. Some attempted to climb out the windows, but the windows, too, were sealed tight. At last, Lei Jingzhe stuck his head out from behind the curtain and looked down. When Cui Ching spied him, she waved a handkerchief and shouted, My dear nephew, help us open the door. The back hall is on fire. Oh, that's her nephew. Okay. Fei Sheng's hand was on the hilt of his blade. The moment Shen Zichuan gave the command, the embroidered uniform guard would swarm the building. But Shen Zichuan continued to drink his tea without a word. Fei Sheng couldn't help but call out, Master! At that moment, a hand grabbed onto the railing in front of Lei Jingzhe, and a man heaved himself up over it. Lei Jingzhe's countenance instantly changed. He jumped backward to dodge his attacker's incoming scimitar, and knocked the screen behind him over with a loud crash, exposing the table and chairs in the middle. To their surprise, Lei Jingzhe himself was the only one there. He didn't invite anyone at all, Fei Sheng blurted in shock. This was bait, a gambit meant to lure a snake from its hole. Okay. Shen Zichuan felt for his folding fan, only belatedly remembering that he had broken it. Oh, it's so sad that he broke this fan. Is that also a fan that Xiaoqia got him? Because he got blood on the fan that Xiaoqia got him, and then I think he stopped using it. But I don't remember if Xiaoqia got him another one. Anyway, not important now. Shen Zichuan felt for his folding fan, only belatedly remembering he had broken it. He drained the tea in his cup, and watched the men Lei Jingzhe had left downstairs rush up to meet him. Oddly, other than the area Lei Jingzhe was in, the rest of the 5th floor was quiet. Fei Sheng, sharp-eyed, stuck his head out and stared at the fight across from them. He watched carefully for a moment as they exchanged blows, then exclaimed in bewilderment, Master, this man is also a scorpion. The man who'd come to assassinate Lei Jingzhe had inadvertently exposed the side of his neck as he swung his blade, revealing a scorpion tattoo identical to Gedal's. Okay. Well, we're on page 261 for chapter 172, and it's called Haru. And we know that's Yan Haru. So is that who's fighting, who has a scorpion tattoo? Wait, no, because that was... No, Yanharu was the one who was supposed to be meeting someone and he wasn't meeting anybody. Yeah. So that would be him, right? Maybe? I might just... I might... That might not make any sense. It's a lot of things are happening. Maybe we'll find out. We'll probably find out. But I was going to say something, and I completely lost that, so maybe it'll come back to me, who knows. Yeah, Yanharu is the owner of this establishment. But I think they were saying, like, he was supposed to be meeting someone, and then, oh, it was a trap, and he wasn't actually meeting anybody. But the person fighting is probably someone else? Oh yeah, Blue, you said, I'm so weak for the drinking tea while chaos breaks out around him. Because it's all going according to plan, and he's too badass to break a sweat trope. It's very good. I do enjoy that. Okay. Internal strife. Fei Sheng took in the scene before him. Men were fighting tooth and nail on the other side of the mezzanine. Lei Jingzhe's injuries had yet to fully heal, and he was clearly having difficulty parrying his assailants' savage attacks. It was all he could do to dodge. Amid the blows traded by the two opposing groups of scorpions in the cramped private room, Chen Zichuan saw flashes of scimitars and pike daggers. Standing at his side, Fei Sheng itched to take action. He badly wanted to make up for the humiliation suffered earlier that day and reclaim the dignity of the embroidered uniform guard, which had been making mistake after mistake. Heaven had not failed him. It had arranged such a cutthroat scene to give him a helping hand. He drew his Xiaochun saber. Master, this is our chance to take down Lei Jingzhe and make him stand trial. What's the hurry? Shen Zichuan's tone was measured. They're giving us a free show. Puzzled, Fei Sheng looked back at Lei Jingzhe. He now saw how nervous the bandit looked, not at all like a mastermind whose plan was unfolding as expected. Both sides were equally matched, and the air was filled with the sound of shattering, as glazed lamps and jade vases were smashed to pieces in the fight. He observed carefully and noticed Lei Jingzhe was already attempting to retreat. It had been pandemonium downstairs, but after the thick smoke dispersed, all was quiet again. The light still hung high, huge, glazed palace lanterns with various dazzling patterns glowing in the center of the main hall. The dead maidservants and attendants were swiftly disposed of, and even the bloodstains on the ground were wiped clean. With a flick of the curtain at the back of the hall, new maidservants came pouring in bearing freshly laid trays. They picked up the overturned tables and chairs, and pulled the various merchants back into position with smiles and light chatter. A bronze gong sounded, and the attendant who had welcomed them at the brokerage stepped onto the stage in a new robe. He struck the gong he held a few more times and announced in a ringing voice, Moutlaw's Chief of Bandits, Lei Jingzhe, versus Duanzhou's Little Scorpion, He Ri-gu. Tonight, two martial experts meet. Who will live and who will die? Gentlemen, place your bets. What? What? Fei Sheng had never expected such a turn of events. He thought he'd seen every kind of unpredictable and tumultuous situation in Chudu, yet now he blurted out in shock. They're betting on lives? The bamboo blinds in the remaining fifth-floor rooms promptly lifted to reveal wealthy merchants in comfortable seats, drinking their tea, waving their fans, and smoking their pipes. Lei Jingzhe moved to leap out the window and make his escape, only to realize it had been nailed shut well beforehand. I've long heard the young master of the Yan clan doesn't do anything unless it will profit him, Shen Zichuan said. To think he could even find profit in a trade like this. The screen in one particular private room was moved aside, and the swift sounds of abacus beads flicking rang out like pelting rain. The young man behind the screen looked up from his counting and grinned. Money makes the world go round. Even blood brothers have to pay their debts. Might as well make the most of it. He set down the abacus and gripped the rail, sticking his head out and giving Fei Sheng a once-over. Then he winked at Shen Zichuan and smiled. Say, it's not easy to find an embroidered uniform guard. This one is good-looking, and he's tall enough, too. I can take him to Madame Cui Ching later as an apology. Governor, sell him to me, okay? Hearing him so casually expose Shen Zichuan's identity, Fei Sheng instinctively tightened his grip on his blade and stood before Shen Zichuan to shield him. This man was perhaps 3 or 4 years older than Ding Tao, but he still had a childish air about him. With his fair skin and fine features, and those eyes that seemed soaked in honey, he looked particularly likable. Looked is the key word. Looked is the key word, okay? Doesn't mean he was. Upon seeing him, Lei Jingjie, on the opposite end of the mezzanine, flew into a rage. Barely able to hold himself back, he spat. The young master deceived me. You defend Gedal for the sake of a couple of scorpions? Gedal is backwater on the far side of the Chasha River. Yan Heru straightened up. Your uncle owes me 580,000 taels of silver. You owe me 340,000. Are you too good to pay your debts? Lei Jingjie snapped off a chair leg and dove out of the way of the glinting blade of his attacker. The confrontation with Xiao Qiye had set him back considerably, and he had been forced to rely on Li Xiong for an escape he only managed by the skin of his teeth. Now he found himself surrounded once again. Except this time he had played right into the hands of someone he considered an ally. Yan Heru rested his arms on the railing, legs swinging under his chair. Amused by the sight of Lei Jingjie fighting for his life, he shouted toward the crowd downstairs. A battle between two heavyweights is a rare sight indeed, so place your bets, and hands off after. Double your profit if you win, and if you lose, treat it as an evening's entertainment. I, Yan Heru, won't let anyone walk out of Dunzhou so broke he can't buy pants to cover his ass. Lei Jingjie was trapped in a deadly battle for his life. He had brought only 30 men because he had foolishly trusted Yan Heru's lies. Now that Lei Jingjie had the support of the Biansha horsemen along with the 400 scorpions stationed in Dunzhou, he had been sure Yan Heru would show him respect if the Yan clan still intended to do business in the east. But for all his machinations, Lei Jingjie had never expected Shen Zichuan, of all people, to seize those military supplies. An iron cage had been set up in the hall. Both Lei Jingjie and the enemy scorpions had suffered heavy casualties. More than half their men were wounded or dead. Lei Jingjie spoke to the man who'd come to assassinate him in the Biansha tongue. Hey Rigu, we're all brothers from Gedal. Why tear each other apart here? Join forces with me now, and I won't ask what happened to those supplies. But the other man did not respond. He only swept his wavy mess of hair back before pulling out his pike dagger to pounce on Lei Jingjie once again. Yan Heru poured himself a cup of wine. Want to know how I knew you'd come? Liu R's informants all have their price. Shen Zichuan peeled an orange and brought a segment to his mouth. As long as the money is good, any news can be resold. Yan Heru laughed again. See, it sounds like I'm a rube when you put it that way, but I actually did have a hunch. Huaizhou's surplus grain has all gone eastward into Cizhou's granaries. Nobody could purchase grain in such large quantities but you, Shen Zichuan. What a coincidence, then, Shen Zichuan said, to be meeting you here. Sweet talker, said Yan Heru. Your lordship was waiting for the opportunity, weren't you? But I'm stumped. How do you know the person Lei Jingjie invited tonight was me? Okay, maybe I just got confused because I thought the thing was Yan Heru invited somebody and we were trying to figure out who that was. I don't know. I'm losing I'm losing my marbles or my beans. As I guess beans are a thing now. But I might have just flipped that around in my head or something. I don't know. Um, I wait. Blue. We've all been thrown in the gutter by Henry. Um, where the heck was I? Shen Zichuan finished the orange before continuing. Lei Jingzhe's current trip to Dunzhou to search the arriving goods surely ruffled the feathers of all the merchants in the city. Yet the Yan clan didn't step forward to obstruct him. This suggests you were already in communication. In that case, he would have had to invite you over for a drink, would he not? He could also seize the opportunity to mend his relationship with the Yan clan. And why wouldn't he? To that end, he went as far as to select a restaurant owned by the Yan clan to show his sincerity. Delighted, Yan Haru exclaimed, "You're so smart." Yan Haru placed his own interests first in everything he did, yet he appeared remarkably naive as he clutched that heavy golden abacus to his chest, like a child god of wealth. How old is he, actually? If not for the fact that he dripped gold and jade from head to toe, Fei Sheng would never have guessed this young man was the current head of the Yan clan if he passed him on the street. Across the mezzanine, Lei Jingzhe was already flagging as yet another wave of men rushed up from below. His men were vastly outnumbered, trapped in the private room. Still, he was unwilling to yield. The scorpions with him clustered towards the walls and smashed the window panels in with their elbows. The night breeze gusted in through the splintered windows. Lei Jingzhe didn't rush forward, but merely watched as the scorpion who had punched the opening stuck his head out, only to meet with calamity. He was instantly decapitated. Yan Haru huffed and pouted. "This is my establishment. You'll leave when I tell you to leave, and stay when I tell you to stay." The building was teeming with people both inside and out. The circle of men around Lei Jingzhe slowly closed in. The crowd of merchants on the bottom floor were men whose loyalties shifted like the tide. When they saw Lei Jingzhe was doomed, they hurried to follow in Yan Haru's footsteps and place their bets against him. Everyone was waiting for him to die. The atmosphere crackled with restlessness. Cui Qing clutched at her handkerchief, not bashful in the least as she shed the stacks of bracelets on her arms and bet everything on Hei Rigu. She had long since forgotten about her dear nephew, Lei Jingzhe. "Did you decide to kill Lei Jingzhe because you knew I was in Dunzhou?" Shen Zichuan asked out of the blue. "That's right," Yan Haru answered, yawning. "A merchant like me's got to go where the wind blows. This trade route between Huaizhou, Cizhou, and Shazhou is interesting. You've got the Libei armored cavalry for added security, and if you head further north, you can clean up at Libei's trade market. Now imagine if we joined forces. The 3 northeast territories of Great Zhou will be as good as ours, right? I keep a chokehold on routes through Hezhou to block Qidong's military provisions for you, and you take me along for the ride up north. You scratch my back, I scratch yours." As he spoke, he shifted forward, interested. "The way I see it, you are gunning for Chudu. You have a bright future ahead of you. Possibilities everywhere." "So I see." Shen Zichuan rose and motioned for Fei Sheng to get his cloak. "Yup." Yan Haru rocked back in his chair as he looked out at the dancing figures and asked, frowning, "Leaving so soon? The show isn't over. He isn't dead yet. Don't you want Lei Jingzhe's head?" Shen Zichuan fastened his cloak and looked back. "Is anyone tending to those 400 scorpions?" "Your lordship is here," Yan Haru answered. "Have your Cizhou garrison troops annihilate them." "In that case, I must apologize," Shen Zichuan said with a smile. "I brought only 12 men with me." The words had scarcely left Shen Zichuan's mouth when the doors of the main hall crashed open. Yan Haru craned his neck for a look. Scorpions had filled the street outside. They had even taken out the last remaining head cart in the Dunzhou armory, hiding untold men beneath its covered roof. Lei Jingzhe leapt onto the railing and whistled sharply to signal the scorpions to attack. The men guarding the building were all martial masters Yan Haru had paid handsomely, but pitting them against scorpions specially trained to fight the Libe armored cavalry was akin to throwing an egg against a rock. In no time, their broadswords and daggers were flung away by the swinging hammers. A crash rang out as a chair overturned. Yan Haru bunched up his robe and climbed to his feet, cradling his golden abacus, intending to flee. The moment he opened the door of the private room, he bumped into Fei Sheng, who lifted him by the back of his collar. As his feet left the ground, Yan Haru cried out, "What the hell? We're on the same side." Yan Haru's guards lunged forward to seize him back, but the embroidered uniform guard with Shen Zichuan had already risen with blades drawn. Blue, you said this feels like watching Mean Girls. "Let's leave together," Shen Zichuan said. "We can get to know each other on the way." Unable to break free, Yan Haru suffered Fei Sheng carrying him downstairs like a caught quail as he shouted, "Hey Rigu, we're leaving. Come on." Chaos had descended over the hall. The Biansha scorpions didn't give a damn whom they killed and swung their hammers at anyone who crossed their path. Cui Ching watched blood and brain matter splatter out of the head of the man before her and stain her robes. Rattled, she gripped the table for support and recalled the savagery of the Biansha horsemen when they had massacred the city years ago. As she scrambled backward in an attempt to dodge hammers, she couldn't help but shriek, "Nephew, save me." The ground floor was mayhem, and the exit was completely blocked off by the crowd. Keeping a firm grasp on Yan Haru, Fei Sheng kicked the window of Shen Zichuan's private room open and shoved Yan Haru out. Yan Haru squinched his eyes shut and yelled into the wind, "Don't strike. I'm your master." The martial masters standing guard outside hastily sheathed their blades. The wind whistled past. Yan Haru struggled to open his eyes and said resentfully, "Why the hell did you come here without your troops?" "Master, there's a shop just below here, and our carriage waits across the street," Fei Sheng said to Shen Zichuan. When Yan Haru heard that, he clung onto the window frame and shook his head desperately. "I'm not going this way. I'm no martial artist." Shen Zichuan didn't waste his breath on him. With a quick flick of his leg, he kicked Yan Haru down. Wind filled Yan Haru's open mouth as he plummeted, arms and legs flailing as he watched the ground surge up to meet him. The fabric canopy of the shop below sank under his weight as he slammed into it, but did not rip. Fei Sheng lifted Yan Haru clear with one hand, grabbed the ledge of the building with the other, and swung in midair for a moment before leaping off and landing steadily on his feet. Oh, Blue, you think Yan Haru is in his late teens or early 20s at most? I want to say that the implication here is that he's younger than Shen Zichuan, but I could be wrong. But yeah. No, that makes sense. Oh no, Henry, don't say that. The men of the embroidered uniform guard were all strong and agile. The entire sequence was executed with ease. The instant Fei Sheng's feet touched the ground, he tossed Yan Haru to his subordinate, took two swift steps back, and shouted, "Master!" Shen Zichuan landed deftly on the eaves, moved gracefully across the canopy, and stepped on Fei Sheng's shoulder before alighting on the ground. All hell had broken loose inside the building, as the sound of slaughter rose through the roof. Not daring to confront the scorpions head-on, Fei Sheng escorted Shen Zichuan into the carriage and waved his hand in the signal to withdraw. Moving swiftly, the embroidered uniform guard steered the carriage into the busy streets and left the restaurant behind in the blink of an eye. Lei Jingzhe threw the windows open, but Yan Haru had vanished without a trace. He pounded his fist against the frame in a fury and ordered his men in the Bian Shatong, "Don't let these traitors escape." It was silent all around when the carriage finally stopped. Yan Haru huddled against the wall of the carriage, clutching the abacus to his chest as he pleaded, "Now hang on, we can talk it over, and the prices are all negotiable. Don't be mad, your lordship." Shen Zichuan took off his brimmed hat and tossed it aside, then called to Fei Sheng, "Lift the curtain." Oh my god. We have art, but I'm not ready for the art yet. Oh, we're not ready for the art yet. Oh god, oh god. We haven't had art this whole stream. Fei Sheng, standing outside, did as he was told, and a putrid smell wafted out of the carriage. Fei Sheng wrinkled his nose, and sure enough, Yan Haru said with an abashed smile, "Whenever I'm anxious, I get gassy." The embroidered uniform guard outside burst into a fit of coughing. Not fart jokes in my QJJ. Of all the things. Shen Zichuan barked out a laugh, and Yan Haru felt a chill run down his spine. He scrambled to press himself back against the wall of the carriage even before Shen Zichuan said gently, "Strip him." My mother was right. Yan Haru was now very anxious indeed. "Good-looking men are all beasts. Don't do this. I'm not into men." Fei Sheng held down the back of Yan Haru's head and stripped him in no time, although he fortunately left his pants untouched. Nights were chilly in Dunzhou in the 8th month, and Yan Haru, that delicate and fair-skinned lad, was so cold his teeth were chattering. "Master, there's no scorpion on him," Fei Sheng reported. Shen Zichuan folded his arms over his chest, pinned his gaze on Yan Haru, and got straight to the point. "What's your relationship to the scorpions?" Yan Haru rubbed his bare arms and blinked a pair of doe eyes, shivering so hard he stuttered. "Why are you asking me? Your lordship, you've got it backward. You should be asking what your relationship to the scorpions is." Shen Zichuan's eyes were dark and deep. "And just what is my relationship to the scorpions?" What? Tell me more? They're not going to tell me more, of course. After a fraught moment of silence, Yan Haru answered innocently, "I have no idea." "Fei Sheng," Shen Zichuan called out. Fei Sheng reached in to drag Yan Haru out of the carriage. On seeing this, Yan Haru started to struggle. "I said I don't know. Hey Rigu, you tell him." A man tumbled out from behind the carriage and fell to the ground, panting. The same one who had climbed over the railing to assassinate Lei Jingjia earlier. His prominent nose and deep-set eyes placed him as a member of the Biansha tribes, but he had black hair and black eyes, and the contours of his face were softer than those of Hu Helu or Hassan. A turn of his head revealed the scorpion tattoo at the side of his neck. The embroidered uniform guards swiftly trained their swords on him. Hei Rigu was wounded. As he pressed a hand over the hasty bandage job, he looked at Shen Zichuan behind a sea of drawn blades and breathed, "Son of Gedal." We have art to look at, but I just want you to know that's where we're stopping for today. I know this has to do with Bai Cha, Shen Zichuan's mother. And we already knew there was some association with her and some of the Biansha in this particular area. But like, this is getting deeper. I hope that you can see the art clearly. Hold on, I need to make it so I can see my camera. Do we see, like, is it that Shen Zichuan is still wearing his, like, veiled disguise? Is that why his shadow is like that? Like, why is his shadow like that? It's very disconcerting, and I love it. But to, like, what is going on? um Blue, you said, why does Shenzachuan's evil shadow fill me with nothing but fondness? Oh yeah, I love that the earring is there too. You think it's just ominous stylization? Like his face was just like that. Oh, and I know that's why Yanhiru is like freaked out. That's so funny though. Yeah, he took off his hat and he wasn't wearing a mask. Right, so he doesn't have the veil. So it's literally just like, we thought this would be fun and creepy to do. Yeah, Blue. Oh, you said Blue, the amount of theories I had about this. I spiraled bad. Can't say about what yet. No, yeah, don't tell us anything, but I'm glad we're coming back on Saturday. On Saturday, we're going to pick up on chapter 173, which is called Black and White. And maybe we'll find out more about this son of Gedal thing. But that's we've certainly gone out with a bang today. That was certainly a lot. Yeah, Vase, you said he looks like a happy, maniacal little ghost. Oh, okay. Okay, Psykeen, you said Saturday we'll have one of your favorite chapters. Well, I'm excited. I can't possibly imagine what is going to happen. Oh yeah, I will... Well, I'm gonna schedule the video on here like I normally do. And then I will also give a ping in the Discord so y'all remember that it's happening on Saturday. Yeah, on Friday I can do that. Okay. Hopefully I remember, but I should remember because Friday is probably when I'm gonna schedule the video too. So I'll just ping everyone when I do that. Yep. I can't believe we're already this far into this volume. And just things are going crazy as I thought. Also, I will say, considering the cover, we better get more of these two soon. Because we had their meet cute, but that was it so far, so I'm expecting more in the volume at some point. Henry, the glasses are not new. I've had these for a very long time. You're just now processing what they look like, I guess. It's okay. It happens. Yeah, so I will see y'all on Saturday. I'll ping you on Friday. I cannot wait to find out what the heck is happening. So yeah, see y'all then. Bye.